Yo, it has been a wild week for crypto. If you've been following, you kind of have heard a handful of the pieces of news that have came out regarding Silvergate and a couple other situations that have been going on. We're going to kind of cover the market as a whole. I've got a quick clip that I'm going to play for you, but essentially we're going to talk about Barry Silbert. If you know anything about Barry Silbert, you know he's been involved in crypto Bitcoin for quite a while. He's been actually the founder of Bitcoin Trust that was came out in 2013. We're going to dive into how he's involved, or what my opinion is as far as how he's involved in some of the crypto crashes that have been happening all the way back to with FTX. And if you know anything about Gemini, we're going to talk a little bit about that. The Cameron Winklevoss twins that have been making some accusations since January regarding Barry Silbert, as well as some of the money that's owed allegedly to FTX by Barry Silbert as well. So jumping in though, one of the companies that he actually owns, we'll cover a handful of the other companies he is involved in, having stake in, but one of those companies that he owns, you're probably familiar with, Coindesk, is the person that, not person, but company that is reporting on some of the information regarding Silvergate that I'm going to play a quick clip on. They are trying to bring light towards Binance and their involvement, so we'll see kind of what's to come of that over the next few weeks. But definitely bullish on Binance's situation as far as their take and buying over Voyager and everything that's going on there. So, anyways, jumping right in here.
Keep using crypto-friendly banking crisis. I'm not sure it's crypto-friendly, but yeah, I mean, I think unlike with Silvergate Bank earlier in this week, which, we've had some time to report on and dig into the details there, the Silicon Valley Bank collapse is still pretty fresh. We're still sort of, picking through the rubbish there and figuring out what went wrong. But it does feel, it does seem like they had a lot of crypto clients. Maybe not as much on the lending side, on the asset side. But, David Z. Morris, our columnist, had a really smart column out earlier today about just, there's issues that you said this earlier, Christine,
Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be a lot of different opinions coming out over the next few weeks regarding Silvergate and Silicon Valley Bank's collapse that have happened just recently. But I mean, they are trying to put some light on Binance, obviously, there. We could see that they showed a little clip of CZ's tweet regarding how they have absolutely no finance or stake in Silvergate, or if they do, they're unaffected, right? So, gonna kind of tie everything in here back to what the thumbnail said. So, no, it's not clickbait or anything like that, but Barry Silbert, he does own DCG. Okay, so Coindesk here acquired by DCG, Digital Currency Group, by way of looks like January 2016. Barry Silbert and company had acquired Coindesk, right? So why I think that's partially relevant is obviously, Coindesk being a big entity in the crypto industry. As far as reporting news, I get a lot of news from Coindesk. It's obviously their decision on what news goes out, right? So I think that is going to play a hand in what's to come over the next couple of weeks. But anyways, kind of diving into why that also is relevant. So FTX, right? We all know about FTX. We know about SBF situation and Alameda Research and Caroline Ellison and Gary Wang and all the other stuff that I've been reporting on. If you go back and watch a few of those videos, you'll learn a little bit more if you aren't super familiar with those situations, right? So with that, right? So they're claiming that they're looking to retrieve around $9 billion, right? So Alameda Research is suing Grayscale and its owners being Barry Silbert, right? This guy right here, and the guy that you saw in the thumbnail, for around $9 billion, right? And we know that $9 billion was the amount that was lost as far as user funds, investor funds, right? So not accusing them of anything here, but the tokenist here did report on how their portfolio and everything, as far as the ownership side of the business of Grayscale owning DCG, is now accused of owing this money, right? So we'll come back to why that's potentially relevant as well here soon, right? So you saw the thumbnail. DCG, Barry Silbert owes and owns how much, right? So we just talked about what's allegedly owed to FTX. Now let's talk about what they potentially, not potentially, but what they own and how that could potentially affect the market, right? So I'm on their website here, dcg.co, looking at their portfolio, right? So we'll see kind of how this is relevant, what their assets are, and how it could affect the market, right? So you're looking at some of the companies that they've been invested in since 2013, right? We recognize a handful of these. Coinbase, obviously, Genesis, who was the supposed backer for Gemini. And we'll talk about that here in a second with Cameron Winklevoss and how that could be relevant. Paxos, right? So Binance's essentially issuer of BUSD, which was just recently uh, came under fire, and BUSD and Paxos are no more as far as a partnership, right? There was a whole thing that went down with that. And Grayscale, right? Grayscale being the original Bitcoin trust that was founded in 2013, also relevant. Ripple, we know Ripple. They're invested in Ripple, BitPay, Ripio, Gift, a couple other companies, right? Now let's kind of move forward to some of the stuff that they own overall, or have ownership in, right? So we're gonna see a handful of companies here that we know of, right? Exani, we've got a handful: Bitmark, BitGo, Bitflyer, BigChain, BitPay. The list just goes on and on, right? Blockchain as a whole, Brave, a browser. I mean, they're invested in a ton of things, right? So they have a lot of money out, a lot of money coming in. That's relevant, right? We're going to continue talking about that. Okay, so as we talked about, FTX is claiming that Grayscale, who we were just looking at, is one of their entities. If we go down to the G's, Grayscale, being their Bitcoin trust, allegedly owes FTX $9 billion or more dollars, right? Kind of crazy. Okay, so keep going here. Obviously, we have the market crash as far as stable coins have gone today. The market's kind of recovered and it's back up to right around 98 cents, right? The USDC stablecoin is up to about 98 cents now, but earlier in the day, it lost its peg of a dollar. Got down to as low as 86 cents. That's not great, right? So with Silvergate crashing, Silicon Valley Bank crashing, there's a lot of FUD, a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's out there. And why I say there is because we can just look here at Silverbank, not Silverbank, excuse me, but Silicon Valley Bank, right? So they are the 18th largest bank in the U.S. with assets totaling of over $214 billion. Okay. So yes, there were $3.3 billion that essentially they were not able to issue out. Okay. Sorry, 212 billion. I was looking at Amex, but neither here nor there. So $212 billion in assets that SVB or Silicon Valley Bank owns. Okay. So that's not crashing necessarily, right? So if they own these assets, I don't necessarily see the owners of SVB being in bad shape, right? They're probably going to exit the company with a couple $1 billion, right? So they're not going anywhere necessarily. The bank might be, but the owners that have a part in that $3.3 billion just gone, kind of crazy. Okay. So again, not alleging anything, just kind of going over what I've found in the market. It seems to all be connected in some way, and I'm sure things will unravel. Okay. So here's the fear and greed index on alternative.me's website. Looking like there's a lot of fear in the market right now. 33% on the fear side, right? 100 being the kind of greed index, right? Accumulating, selling. But at this moment, a lot of sales are happening over buys, just at least at the moment. You can see off to the right hand side here, there are still a lot of buys going on, right? This is your buy sell chart live right now. By the way, there's a 10-second chart on the bottom and a minute chart right here in the middle. Okay, so if you want to kind of keep following along as we're reporting on the news, you definitely can. So anyways, continuing on here, what else does Barry Silbert and DCG and Grayscale and all of his entities potentially owe, right? So this came out back in January. A lot of people might be familiar of Gemini, the exchange, and how they're essentially shutting down, or at least temporarily shut down, because they're illiquid, right? Allegedly, that is because $1.1 billion is owed to Gemini Exchange, Cameron Winklevoss's company, and his brother as well, Winklevoss twins. So at this point, now we have over $10.5 billion allegedly owed by Barry Silbert and his entities. Okay, so Cameron Winklevoss put this letter out back in January talking about this $1.675 billion owed. Barry Silbert goes in to talk about how, off to the right here, we can see it's in yellow, so it's hard to see, but he's saying that DCG did not borrow $1.67 billion from Genesis. Okay. Um, Genesis being, the company that's essentially backing Gemini's exchange. Okay. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I think there's a lot of he said, she said here in this situation specifically, but there is going to be a lot of proof that's going to come out of this. And I think Barry Silbert is going to be someone that, even though he's saying that his promissory note is what, right here, right? So, promissory note is what was agreed upon to pay as far as like being the backing of this exchange that Cameron Winklevoss owns, right? Allegedly, all allegedly, that is again over $10 billion owed. Promissory note is a legal binding document, right? So as you can see here, just a quick Google search from 9 credible sources, yes, a promissory note is a legal binding document. So if that's true, Barry Silbert, along with the FTX news we were talking about, owes over $10 billion. That can move markets. I mean, is that what's really going on here in the crypto market? Who knows? Just kind of what I'm seeing. Okay, so again, SVB, $3.3 billion. It's kind of what allegedly caused the stablecoin USDC crash, along with the Silvergate crash and them shutting down entirely. So a lot of it does seem connected, but again, not financial advice, not saying it is connected, just for all the information to be coming out around the same time. Seems like something's happening. Let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe. Have a good evening.